Ethan tossed the pen onto the desk and leaned back in his leather chair, exhaling slowly. The agreement was signed. The deal was closed. The club was his. He ran a hand over his face, as if wiping away the tension of the last few weeks. This was not just another acquisition. It was a trophy, a symbol of his success, his power. Years of grinding, the relentless hustle of deals, meetings, and high-stakes negotiations. And now, finally, he owned the one nightclub in Manhattan he'd always seen as not just profitable, but iconic. Ethan glanced at the oversized clock on the wall. 9:47 p.m. He could drive home right now, back to their Upper East Side apartment, wrap Sophia in his arms, tell her everything, and watch that surprised smile spread across her face. But something held him back. No, he wanted to do this differently, with style, with a little bit of suspense. He leaned forward, clearing a stack of closing documents from his blotter, and pressed the intercom button. "Chris, you still here?" A few seconds later, the door opened. A solid-looking man in a tailored navy blazer walked in, his hair cut short, his eyes sharp. Chris, the club's general manager. A man who knew every light bulb and every employee by name. Of course, Ethan. Congratulations. Hell of a deal. Ethan nodded and stood up, stretching slowly. Thanks. I need to get a handle on the security system. I want to know exactly what we've got: cameras, access points, who's coming in and out. Chris raised an eyebrow slightly but said nothing. It was not his job to know the why, just to follow instructions. He nodded and gestured for Ethan to follow him. They left the office, walking down a narrow, softly lit corridor. Ethan felt the plush carpeting absorb the sound of their footsteps. Behind the next door was another universe. The throb of music, the flash of lights, the roar of voices. The dance floor was a sea of bodies moving to a deep house beat, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and spilled liquor. Ethan paused for a moment, taking it all in. The place ran like a Swiss watch. Bartenders moved with fluid efficiency, waitresses navigated the tables with impossible grace, and the VIP section, roped off with velvet, looked both exclusive and alluring. Everything was exactly as it should be. "Security room is downstairs," Chris said, his voice cutting through the noise. They went through a service door, down a flight of stairs, and into a small, windowless room lined with monitors. A couple of technicians watching the feeds immediately straightened up when they saw the new owner. "At ease, guys." "Just taking a look?" Ethan said calmly, walking toward the screens. The images cycled through. A wide shot of the main floor, the long marble bar, the hallways, the individual VIP booths. Ethan studied them intently, noting the crisp, high-definition quality of the video. No blurry silhouettes here. He could make out every face, every expression. "We have cameras everywhere?" he asked, turning his gaze to Chris. "Almost," Chris replied, leaning over the console. "There are a few blind spots, but not many. Mostly near the restroom entrances and behind some of the structural columns." Ethan nodded. "And the VIP suites?" "The suites have them too. Discreet ones. The guests think no one is watching, but we see everything." Chris smirked, pointing to a monitor where, in the cozy, dim light, a few couples were talking, laughing, one pair already getting a little too close. Ethan stared at the screen, but a plan was already forming in his mind. "Give me access," he said. Chris wordlessly handed him an iPad. "Password?" "I'll put it in." Ethan held the device out, watching as the manager's fingers flew across the screen. A moment later, he had full administrative access to the entire system. Now he was in control. Total control. He gave a slow nod, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. "Good work," he said, looking up at Chris. "We'll talk tomorrow about upgrading a few things." "You got it," the manager replied. "I'll be around if you need anything." Ethan waited for him to leave, then turned back to the wall of monitors. The music pulsed. The club vibrated with life. He swiped a finger across the iPad's screen, cycling through the camera feeds, scanning the blur of faces. People laughing, people drinking, people scanning the crowd for their next target. He checked the time again. 10:30 p.m. And Sophia had said she was going out for dinner with the girls. I wonder where, he thought. Ethan picked up the iPad and typed her name into the facial recognition software. Searching. He let out a slow breath, his eyes fixed on the screen. Match found. The image populated instantly. His wife, Sophia. She was here. She appeared on camera at the main entrance, turning her head slightly to fix her hair. A dark, form-fitting dress, high heels, a confident stride. She was laughing, saying something to her friends over her shoulder. With a confident wave of her hand, she led them toward the bar. Ethan's jaw tightened. She'd told him it was a girls' night out, and she'd chosen his club, the very club he had just become the sole owner of tonight. He switched the feed to the main bar. Sophia ordered a cocktail, leaned in to whisper something to her friend. The friend laughed, threw an arm around her shoulders, and they clinked glasses. Ethan felt a slow burn ignite in his chest. He could not take his eyes off the screen, watching as his wife took a sip, then another. She moved with a relaxed energy, her shoulders swaying slightly to the music. Nothing out of the ordinary. Not yet. Ethan swiped through the cameras, scanning the room. Couples on the dance floor, groups at the bar, waiters weaving through the crowd, bouncers watching the exits. A typical night in a high-end New York club, until his eyes locked onto one person. A tall man in an expensive suit. Dark hair, sharp features, an air of complete self-assurance. He was sitting alone at the bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and he was watching Sophia. Ethan did not look away. The man tilted his head slightly, like a predator that had just spotted its prey. He took a slow sip, then stood up and started walking directly toward her. Ethan tapped the screen, zooming in. Sophia did not notice him at first. She was laughing at something, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Then she turned. Their eyes met. The man paused for a fraction of a second, letting her read his intent. Ethan had seen that look 100 times. He'd seen men like that on Wall Street, in exclusive bars, in the lobbies of five-star hotels. This guy was one of them. Not the kind who timidly works his way in, but the kind who takes what he wants because he is certain he can. The man said something. Sophia raised her eyebrows slightly, a small smile playing on her lips. Her hand was still holding her cocktail, but her fingers had gone slack, as if she'd forgotten it was there. She answered him. Ethan narrowed his eyes. The reaction was immediate. The man smiled back, moving closer, not touching her, but already invading her personal space. Sophia did not step back. Her friend beside her said something, laughing as if it were all a fun game. Sophia tilted her head, her hair falling forward to obscure half her face. She replied to the man again. He leaned in. Ethan watched as his wife listened intently to another man. Watched as her lips slowly curved into a smile. Watched as her shoulders relaxed. He was not backing down. She was not walking away. Ethan ran his tongue over his teeth, feeling a dull rage building inside him. He looked at the screen again. The man made a subtle gesture, and the bartender slid a new drink in front of Sophia. She accepted it, their fingers brushing for a moment as she took the glass. She did not even look at the drink. She was looking him in the eyes. The music thundered, people laughed, liquor flowed, but for Ethan, only this one scene existed. The man leaned in close, whispering something directly into her ear, and Sophia laughed. Then she nodded. Ethan's eyes darted back to the iPad, switching the camera angle, tracking their every move. The tall brunette in the expensive suit straightened up, smiled, and took a step toward the VIP section. Sophia followed him. Her silhouette glided past the dancers, moving with a confident purpose toward the roped-off area. The man walked beside her, slightly behind, but it was clear he was leading and she was following. She knew what she was doing. Ethan's fingers flew across the tablet, his eyes jumping between feeds. The crowd on the floor, the bartenders, the security at the exit, a waiter carrying a tray of champagne into a booth. Sophia and the man slipped behind a velvet rope, disappearing into the soft, dim light of the area reserved for the elite. Ethan reached out, never taking his eyes off the main monitor, and picked up the iPad. His fingers slid across the display, activating the hidden camera in the suite they had just entered. The image flared to life on the central screen. Sophia stood in profile, her eyes locked with the man's. There was no trace of doubt in them. She smiled, said something. The audio was off, but Ethan did not need words. He knew that smile. He'd seen it 1,000 times. Only before it had belonged to him. The man replied, took a step closer. Sophia tilted her head slightly, bit her lip. Ethan felt the muscles in his jaw clench. Another step. The man reached out, his fingers brushing her waist. A barely their touch, but enough. She did not pull away. On the contrary, she took a step toward him. Ethan watched as his wife tilted her head back, letting this man into her space. Watched as he stroked her back, his palms sliding over the fabric of her dress. Watched as he leaned in, whispering something right next to her lips. Watched her smile. A sudden move and his mouth was on hers. Ethan blinked but did not look away. He watched his wife kiss back. No hesitation. No resistance. Her hands came up to his chest, her fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt before sliding smoothly up to his neck. The kiss deepened. Ethan gritted his teeth harder. The man was taking his time. He knew what he was doing. One hand slid lower, squeezing her thigh gently. Sophia did not object. She was responding, moving into him. Ethan dropped his head, closing his eyes for a second. Rage, pain, betrayal. He lifted his head and looked at the screen again. The man pulled her tight against him. Sophia let out a soft laugh, her fingers tracing his shoulder. She said something, their lips barely parting, and he smirked in response. His hand moved lower, sliding between her legs. Ethan felt his fists clench. His wife's fingers trembled almost imperceptibly, but it was not from fear. It was excitement. This man knew how to play the game. And she was not fighting it. She was on fire for him. She was with him. Ethan rose slowly from his chair, the casters scraping quietly against the floor. His eyes were glued to the screen. He watched the man lead her toward a low-slung leather couch. Watched Sophia follow obediently, her gaze never leaving his. Watched her sink down beside him. And Ethan already knew what was coming next. Sophia was in front of him, her head bowed. Her long hair fell around her face. Her lips were parted, her breathing uneven. She looked up at him through her lashes, her eyes full of anticipation. Ethan could not move. He saw her hands slide toward his belt, deftly unbuckling it. The quiet clink of the metal buckle, and in the next second, her lips were on his skin. Her head moved, rhythmically, skillfully. Her fingers gripped his thighs gently. He saw every movement, every touch. Ethan was frozen. He watched as her hands moved with a familiar confidence, her fingers finding the buckle of the man's belt. He saw the glint of metal, and then her head dipped out of frame. The stranger's hands rested on her hair, his posture relaxed, dominant. He saw every possessive touch, every stolen intimacy. Ethan let out a sharp, ragged breath and squeezed his eyes shut, wishing it were a nightmare. But this was real. His wife was with a stranger in a VIP suite, and he was watching it on a screen. A minute later, the scene shifted. He watched the stranger peel the dress from her shoulders. It slid down her body like silk, pooling at her feet, leaving her in nothing but lace lingerie. She stood before him, her head turned, her breathing visibly heavy even on the silent feed. He watched her sink to her knees, her back arching, her fingers digging into the plush cushions of the couch. Ethan covered his face with his hands, the frantic thumping of his own heart roaring in his ears. The woman on that screen was someone else entirely. Sophia was no longer his. Ethan hit pause. The image froze. He stared at the screen, but the initial sharp stab of pain was gone. It had been replaced by something else. Something cold, quiet. He straightened up, picked up the iPad, and saved a copy of the recording to a secure cloud server. Then he swiped a finger across the screen, killing the live feed. He had seen enough. Ethan stood, running his hands over his face as if to wipe away the last few hours, and walked to the door. The hallway was empty. The muffled bass from the main floor bled through the walls, a dull, vibrating rhythm that now felt like nothing more than background noise. Ethan stepped out a service exit, pulling the cool night air into his lungs. Inhale, exhale. The city was alive, oblivious. Yellow cabs streaked down the avenue, neon signs reflected off the wet pavement, and the sound of laughter echoed from a group of people passing by. In the distance, a siren wailed. Ethan closed his eyes. There was a hollow space inside him. The rage was gone. The urge to storm back into the club, to drag her off that couch and wrap his hands around the throat of the bastard touching his wife. It had vanished. That would be too easy. Too predictable. He was not going to make a scene. He was not going to play her game. She had made her choice. Now, he would give her the space to see it through to the end. Let her dig her own grave. Ethan pulled out his iPhone, scrolled through his contacts, and hit dial. Yeah, boss. Chris's voice was as sharp as ever. Kill the cameras in the VIP suites, Ethan said, his own voice perfectly calm. There was a beat of silence on the other end. You sure? Positive. Got it. Ethan ended the call. Let her do what she wants. Let her think no one is watching. He would wait until morning, and then he would watch her lie to his face. Ethan was already up when Sophia unlocked the door to their apartment. The soft click of the deadbolt, the sound of her heels on the hardwood floor. He did not turn around, but he knew it was her. He stood at the kitchen island, pouring himself a coffee from the French press. Steam rose from the mug, filling the air with a dark, bitter aroma. Sophia walked in, her movements a little slow but still self-assured, like someone with nothing to hide. Ethan's eyes swept over her. Her dark hair was messy, but in that artfully tousled way. A faint red mark on her wrist showed where a tight bracelet had been. Her lips were slightly swollen, the way they get after being kissed for hours. Her eyes looked tired, but there was no guilt in them, no fear. She did not look like a woman who had spent the night torn apart by remorse. She looked like a woman coming home after a very good time. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. Sophia came closer, smiling. Good morning, she said, her voice soft and a little hoarse. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders from behind and pressed a light kiss to his cheek. He did not pull away. He just slowly set his mug down on the quartz countertop. How was your night? She asked, stepping away to look him in the eye. Ethan met her gaze. Confident, clear, perfectly constructed lie. He allowed a small smile. It was great, he answered, his tone even as he lifted the mug back to his lips. And yours? Sophia smiled again, as if the question meant nothing. Amazing, she said, dropping her purse on a bar stool. We had so much fun. I completely lost track of time. She moved to the Nespresso machine, grabbing a new pod and slotting it into place. Ethan watched her every move. She was not fidgeting. She was not rushing. Her hands were steady. She did not try to explain why she was coming home as the sun was rising. She offered no excuses, because in her mind, she did not need any. She was sure he knew nothing. Ethan took another slow sip of coffee. She sat down across from him, propping her chin on her hand. You re-up early, she observed, drawing out the words, as if testing the waters of his mood. Had a meeting I wanted to prep for, he replied. Sophia nodded, stretching again, rolling her shoulders. I am so exhausted, she purred, faking a lazy smile. These girls' nights are more draining than a soul cycle class. She looked at him, waiting for a comment, a reaction. Ethan smirked internally. She was probing. Her eyes were searching his face for any flicker of suspicion, any crack in his composure. But she found nothing. He was a stone wall. He did not say, "You look tired." He did not ask, "Why are you just getting home now?" He did not mention, "What about the guy in the expensive suit?" He gave her the floor. He let her lead the conversation, and she led it nowhere near the truth. She gave him no reason to be suspicious. Ethan set his mug down gently. "Sounds like you had a good time," he remarked, watching her reaction. Sophia beamed. "The best. The girls are hilarious, especially after a few drinks. We danced, we talked. You know how it is." He nodded. "Oh, I do." He had seen it. Her lips parting for another man. Her body moving to his rhythm. And yet, here she was, sitting across from him, smiling, looking him straight in the eye. Ethan leaned forward, lacing his fingers together on the island. "Sounds like fun," he said. "We should go out to a club together sometime." She blinked. A flicker of hesitation, almost imperceptible. But he caught it. "Yeah, totally," she mumbled, her gaze dropping to her cup. Ethan looked at her and smiled. She had no idea she was walking straight into her own trap. He watched her, noting the subtle tells she thought she was hiding so well. Her breathing was a little too even, her tone a little too rehearsed, her story completely devoid of details. Usually, she was an oversharer. She'd describe every little thing, the funny moments, what they ate, who said what. But not today. Today, her words were carefully chosen, as if she was afraid of saying too much. Ethan smiled, leaning back slightly. "Nothing special happened?" Sophia shrugged. "Nope, just a regular night out." Her eyes were clear, but he saw her fingers tighten around her mug. She was testing him while playing it cool herself. But he was holding the ace that would blow her entire illusion of control to pieces. Ethan did not rush. He reached for his MacBook, which was sitting on the edge of the island, opened it and clicked the trackpad a few times. Sophia instinctively looked away, reaching for her phone, but her hand froze in mid-air when a quiet sound cut through the air. Click. The laptop screen came to life. A video began to play. She saw herself. The grainy, black and white feed from the security camera filled the screen. There was Sophia walking into the VIP suite, wearing the same dress she had on right now. She stopped by the couch, smiling. A tall man in an expensive suit approached her. He whispered something in her ear. Sophia tilted her head, brushing her hair over her shoulder. Then, a step forward, her hand on his chest. He leaned down. The kiss, the intimacy that followed. A dead silence fell over the room. The world seemed to shrink, leaving only the faint hum of the refrigerator, the quiet hiss of the Nespresso machine, and the invisible, deafening crack of a life shattering. Ethan did not take his eyes off her. He wanted to see her reaction. He wanted to watch the moment of realization, to see her beautiful, carefully constructed facade begin to crumble. Sophia was frozen. The coffee cup in her hand was suspended halfway to her lips. She was not breathing. She was not blinking. She was just staring. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the counter, his fingers laced together. "Are you sure you want to lie to me?" Sophia slowly turned her head toward him. He could see the war raging inside her. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Fear flashed in her eyes, but only for a second. She quickly buried it, took a deep breath, set the cup down on the counter with a soft clink, and met his gaze. The heavy, suffocating silence filled the kitchen. The question hung in the air between them. Ethan did not look away. Sophia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. He watched the color drain from her face, her body tensing as if poised for flight, but her feet were cemented to the floor. "Ethan," she finally breathed, her voice a ragged whisper. He calmly took a sip of coffee. The rich aroma filled his mouth, but he tasted nothing. He had already cycled through the entire spectrum of emotions. All that was left was to watch her manufactured reality burn to the ground. "What? he asked, his voice steady. What are you going to say? That it was nothing special? His tone was ice. Not loud, not angry. Just a quiet, clinical calm that sliced through the silence like a scalpel through the dense fabric of her lies. Sophia swallowed hard. He saw her lips tremble, saw her blink several times in quick succession as her mind raced for an escape route. It's not what it looks like, she stammered, her voice hoarse and broken. Ethan looked at her, narrowing his eyes, as if giving her one last chance to say something convincing. But even she knew it was impossible. Sophia looked away. Her hands were shaking. Ethan, she tried again, forcing a brittle smile. You do not really think that I would... She could not finish the sentence. Ethan crossed his arms over his chest. I do not think, Sophia, he said. I see you and I see what you redoing. Her lips pressed into a thin, white line. A tremor ran through her. Fear, panic, a desperate attempt to regain control. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and frowned, as if she finally found a way out. He was drunk, she said quickly, grabbing at the only straw she could find. I had a little too much to drink, too. He just leaned in. I did not even realize what was happening until... Ethan let out a short, humorless laugh. You did not realize? Sophia's jaw tightened. No, it all happened so fast. Ethan nodded slowly, as if considering it. Then he turned the laptop back toward himself and clicked the trackpad a few more times. Let us see about that, he said. Sophia tensed. Her chest heaved, but she fought to keep her expression neutral. On the screen, the video jumped forward. The new image showed her, not as a victim, but as an active participant. Laughing, her hands sliding up the man's chest, pulling him closer as she led him toward the couch. Ethan slowly turned his head back to her. Sophia shrank into her chair, as if her own body was trying to disappear. She had stopped trying to speak. Her lips were slightly parted, a ragged breath escaping in a choked gasp. It does not mean, she started, but her voice broke. She swallowed, her hands twisting together in her lap. Ethan, please. She was not making excuses anymore. The room was once again filled with a dead, heavy silence. Ethan sat at the island, slowly tapping a finger against his ceramic mug. His gaze was calm, cold, detached, but inside him, something dark and merciless was burning. Before him, just a few feet away, Sophia was drowning in the wreckage of her own choices. You know the funny part? Ethan asked, his voice low, savoring every word. Sophia did not answer. She did not even blink. She just stared, her lips pressed together so tightly it seemed she was trying to hold back a scream. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the counter, looking directly into her eyes. That club? That's mine now. Her eyebrows twitched. What? I bought it. The deal closed last night. Sophia's mouth fell open, but she could not form a word. Ethan paused, letting her put the pieces together herself. You cheated on me in my own club? He said softly, almost a whisper, but the impact was louder than any shout. On my watch. Sophia flinched as if struck. Her breathing grew ragged. Her eyes darted from the laptop back to his face. You kidding? Ethan raised his eyebrows. Some joke, huh? Sophia clapped her hands over her mouth. The air seemed to get stuck in her lungs, choking her. Her eyes frantically scanned the counter, the laptop, his face. She was suffocating on the realization. Ethan, her voice was barely audible. He just watched. He savored the moment her confidence, her lies, her composure all collapsed like a house of cards. She understood now. She could not talk her way out of this. She could not delete the video. Every move, every look, every kiss was recorded. No excuse mattered anymore. Her hands began to tremble violently. Ethan, please. But he remained silent. His enjoyment was a form of revenge. Sophia covered her face with her hands. Oh God. Her voice broke, turning into a strangled whisper. She shook her head slowly, as if she could not believe it. Ethan watched her, still relishing the sight of her world imploding. Sophia slowly lowered her hands. Her eyes were filled with a raw terror, but it was not the terror of remorse. It was the fear of the inevitable. She already knew what was coming. Ethan, her voice trembled, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. We can. He cut her off, his voice flat. There is no we. He stood up from the bar stool, moving with an easy, unhurried grace, as if this conversation was of no consequence to him. He reached for his keys on the counter. Sophia watched him, frozen. Ethan tossed the keys in his palm for a second, then met her gaze. You can stay in the apartment. You can go back to your new friend. His voice was almost lazy, devoid of all emotion. I do not give a damn. Sophia tensed, taking a sharp breath as if to protest, but she froze when she saw his face. He had already made his decision. I'm buying a new place, and as for us, we redone, he continued. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. His words fell into the room like an axe, severing the last thread between them. Sophia flinched, shaking her head violently. No, Ethan, no. She started talking faster, her voice sharp, hoarse, and trembling. You see not, we can fix this. But he was already walking toward the door. Wait, she scrambled to her feet. Ethan stopped for a second, turning his head to look at her over his shoulder. Her eyes were glistening with unshed tears, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Are you serious? The words ripped from her throat. He smirked. Do I look like I'm laughing? He was leaving her alone. Ethan. She took a step toward him, her hand outstretched, but she stopped, not daring to touch him. He did not let her finish. Save it, Sophia. I really do not give a damn. We redone. She opened her mouth, but the words were stuck in her throat. Ethan turned, pulled the heavy door open, and walked out. The last thing he heard before the door clicked shut was the sound of her first, broken sob. But he was already gone. He left her there, sitting in front of the laptop, where the frozen image of her betrayal was still on display. Sophia slowly sank back onto the bar stool. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, but she no longer saw it. She covered her face with her hands. Her perfect life had just been completely and irrevocably destroyed. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.